Yeah, that does taste mostly like gasoline.
Awesome.
All right, so this is Liberty on the Rocks. I'm your host, William Gadsden, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Thomas Gilroy. Tom, how are you?
Doing well, man.
Awesome. So our, I can't really say scotch, our drink for the day is George Dickel's White Corn Whiskey. Trying something new today. It's from Tullahoma, Tennessee, which is... There's not much to say about Tullahoma. It's a little town in Middle Tennessee, and there's not really a whole lot going on.
I think they test durability of jet engines around that area.
That is true.
And from what I've been told, they shoot frozen birds that are either defeathered all the way or not at the jet engine while it's running to see if it explodes.
That's outstanding. On what I'm sure is a completely unrelated note, there seems to be a sharp rise in hearing loss of the residents of the general area. This is a horrible introduction. Anyway, you might also notice that I'm dressed down a little bit when compared to the first episode. That is because I do have a very limited number of suits and they'll need to be dry cleaned, which is a perfect segue into our next point, that you should absolutely check out the Think Liberty Amazon store that just opened up. They have the new Liberty or Death t-shirt at $15 for only a limited time. But not to worry, we have some more brand new shirt designs rolling in exclusive to that store in the near future. So check out the Think Liberty Amazon store. And of course, if you have Prime, they do offer 2-day shipping as well. So let's talk about some current events.
Let's do it.
I wouldn't say most recently, but a couple of weeks ago. Let's start from the oldest to newest. There was a riot in Portland. I don't know if you heard about that, but
Yeah, I did.
There's some pretty glorious footage to come out of that. There was a Patriot Prayer, which is a pro-Trump conservative political activism group that went on a pro-Trump march, and predictably, because it's Portland, Antifa rolled out, started throwing bottles, M80s, jars of piss, apparently.
Oh, exciting.
They're just a classy group of people, those Antifa folks. So as a result of that, Patriot Prayer, Proud Boys, a couple other right-wing organizations came out to defend the marchers, and we had what's got to be just the most American, red-blooded American masculine thing I've ever seen in my life. This guy, Rufio, I forget his full handle, but knocks out this Antifa guy just like a sack of potatoes, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever watched. I think I probably have seen it easily over 100 times. It's just...
This is where the guy was attacked. The other dude had an asp. Is that what the baton?
The collapsible baton, yeah. And so he comes at him twice, and the dude blocks it, and then comes in with a right hook, just a freaking haymaker. Glasses of Antifa guy go flying off his face, and his heels just come together like he's doing a Nazi salute. How do we always come around to Nazis in this show? And just collapses onto the ground. Rumor is he's got brain bleeding, and it's just, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but, as the Proud Boys say, F around and find out.
They do say that.
Indubitably.
Well, going back to why do Nazis come up, I don't remember who either it was a political theorist or a philosopher or something that said after a certain amount of time in modern culture, Hitler will be brought up.
Right.
So
is it Gordon's rule, or it's something like that? It's
you know better than I do. I don't remember.
It's a super white guy name. But of course, the segue here being that Antifa likes to call everyone that disagrees with them Nazis. So then you got people that are just going to be like, okay, well, if you're going to call me this, then I guess that's what I am.
Yeah. Well, I think we're probably going to get into this later, but does Antifa accept pedophiles
Yes.
into the LG, et cetera?
Yeah, well, that's one of the new. That's the forefront of the LGBTQAIIPP, whatever else movement.
Lower two.
Lower two and a plus sign, just in case, because they haven't thought of what the next letter they're going to throw in there.
And in case anyone's wondering why I said pedophile, when we talked to Winston some time ago, unrelated, it was like, it's not pedophile, because that would be someone who is infatuated with feet.
Really?
Yeah, because like a podiatrist is a foot doctor.
Oh my gosh!
So they say pedophile.
Wow.
For children.
That's one for Winston. That is one for Winston.
for knowing distinction.
Well, he also taught me the difference between a turtle, a tortoise, and a terrapin.
That's life-saving knowledge.
I'll be damned if I can tell you what the difference is now. But apparently that's a thing.
Okay.
So, British people are just full of wondrous knowledge, except for when it comes to political activism, which is a great segue into our next current events.
Yeah.
The anti-Trump march in London. So I'm sure you saw it was all over social media with the Trump blimp. It's him as a chubby baby, and he's crying. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But, people saw fit to spend tens of thousands of dollars on that. It was celebrated by Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, who is...
Celebrated?
Indeed, yes. He said that it was a sign of how important free speech is to the people of London. We tried to...
Sadiq Khan said something about free speech.
Free speech, yes. We tried to reach out to the hundreds of people that are jailed for saying quote-unquote offensive things online, Tommy Robinson, and also the people that were subsequently shut down at the pro-Trump rally several days later. They were unavailable for comment, strangely enough. So...
I don't see any parallels.
Right, the joke aside, let's unpack that real quick. So we have Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, who there's a lot of other questionable things going on with him, including ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. But
interesting.
Interesting indeed.
Yeah,
but that aside, we had thousands and thousands of people show up to anti-Trump marches in London, and from all of the content that I've seen, none of them could really explain what they didn't like about the president. Of course, I mean, I could name some things that I personally disagree with him personally or policy-wise, but I'm not out marching in the streets with a blimp of a weird baby characteristic of anyway.
So it's basically like if Macy's parade made a childlike Trump.
Yeah, which is it's just creepy. The whole thing's just really creepy. Anyway, so Sadiq Khan comes out in favor of this. Several days later, there was a pro-Trump march in Britain, and that was shut down by British authorities. Of course...
Did they say that it wasn't free speech, or why was it shut down?
Well, I tried to reach out to ask them, but they threatened me with arrest as well. So apparently, hate speech isn't free speech.
Okay.
Anyway. And of course, in Britain, as we talked about before on Liberty Bites, it is illegal to say anything online that can be seen as offensive. And I assume the monitors of what is and isn't offensive are the government themselves. I've already got a buzz.
Well, I'm sure that they're moving the goalposts at will.
Oh, of course.
Well,
there was one case where a female who happens to be of the Caucasian ethnicity. I don't know if you know this, but there seems to be quite a few of those in England. But she was fined for posting rap lyrics that had some offensive words in it on her social media page. So, England's dead. Cheers to that.
I guess that's really depressing.
Yeah, it really is. Long live the Queen, I guess.
I bet she could post rap lyrics to whatever social media she wanted.
I'm sure she could. We'll have to get with Winston on the legality of that, since apparently free speech laws seem to be very much up in the air, much like the blimp. So most recently, there was the meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, and they discussed obviously a lot of foreign policy. There were some trade negotiations involved, and the authoritarian left proceeded to do what they usually do and go screeching off into the sunset. Not really sure why, considering, at minimum, you have to consider Obama's hot mic moment. Do you recall that?
Yeah, you'll have to refresh my memory on who he was talking with, but I guess the timing was before his last election.
Right, it was before the 2012 election. Basically, he was speaking to a Russian aide, and the hot mic caught that he said, this is my last election, but after the election, I'll be, I don't recall his exact verbiage, but basically
more flexible.
More flexible, yeah, I think that was it. And of course, they were discussing the placement of missile defense sites in our allies' countries in Eastern Europe.
So, what would be a more flexible situation that he's posing, perhaps?
Well,
and plus, what did he do, right? Because he's not president anymore. So, what did he do?
At the time, one of the main points of contention between Russia and the U.S. was the placement of those missile defense sites on the Russian border. So,
this is in Ukraine, or just all along the border?
All along the border.
Okay.
So we're on very close relations with several Eastern European countries that border Russia. But basically, the only logical conclusion that you can draw from something like that is that he did not want to potentially compromise the political capital that he had built up for his reelection, for his election campaign. So if he went ahead and pulled those missile defense sites or something along those lines, then that could alienate some people that would otherwise vote for him. So he's playing relations with U.S. allies based on his personal reelection. If that's not considered, what's the word they keep using for Trump?
Collusion.
Collusion. If that is not textbook collusion, then I'm not really sure what definition they're looking at.
Yeah.
So as much as I hate whataboutism, there's plenty of examples of people on their side doing the exact same thing, and I didn't hear them screaming about it.
Yeah.
So forgive me if I take them less than seriously when it comes to that. Speaking of people on the left, let's get to our main topic of discussion, which I'm so excited about. So recently there was an individual in New York City. I forget which district. I think it covers the Bronx. And
is it part of? I don't know. I was going to say something, and who knows if I would be right, but
yeah,
sure.
Talk
Bronx. Yeah.
I know it's the Bronx and one other district. But so basically, she is a 28-year-old democratic socialist, and we'll get into what exactly that may or may not actually mean.
Yeah, because that's different.
Right, because it's different.
It's not.
She is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and
a lot of people in that party. From what I've read.
It's a political action group, and I'm not saying that you should do anything illegal with this information, but you can look up their locations and contact information for every chapter in the U.S. It's open source. So if you wanted to go peacefully protest them, or maybe pass out a book of Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics, I think that's something that should be done, because we want to educate these people. We want to engage with those that are less fortunate than us in the intellectual realm, and try to bring them up to our
just
level.
Consider it a love gift or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, she recently won the Democratic primary for the congressional election against, I think it was a 5-term congressman in that district.
Yeah, 10 years, right?
Yeah, and as soon as this happened and she won the primary, she instantly became a darling of the left. So the New York Times called her a giant slayer. The head of the Democratic National Committee had an interview and said that she is the future of the Democratic Party's platform. You couldn't give this woman enough praises. So you would think that, man, like her platform, her policies, they got to be just on point, right?
Well, I would assume so.
You would assume so.
Tolerant.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
Diversity and strength and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a twofer. She's a Latina and also a female.
Nice.
A biological female. I wouldn't want to assume her gender identity.
That's true. But based on her appearance, she looks like she identifies as a woman.
Indeed. So that's a twofer. That's a diversity twofer right there.
Nice.
So, man, she's checking all the boxes on the left. She likes to brag a lot about how she has a degree in economics.
But not just that, right?
Right. She also has a degree in international relations.
Awesome.
Which is interesting.
And can you say her name?
Yes. I apologize. Her name is Alexandria. What's the watch company? Casio?
Casio?
Oh, yeah. It's something along those lines.
Are you serious?
Cortez. Anyway.
It's Ocasio.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
With a hyphen. Yeah.
Right, there's the hyphen in there.
Yeah, but Casio, that's good.
I'm sure there's some sort of distant relation, when her ancestors immigrated, they changed the name a little bit at Ellis Island.
Yeah, they went from Switzerland to Puerto Rico, and they kept the watchmaking.
Hey, you know what? I mean, they're international travelers.
That's true.
Yeah, you got to respect the legacy. Anyway.
Okay.
So, she was quoted as saying, how many Congress people have degrees in economics? Which I thought was interesting. I mean, the arrogance of it aside.
Yeah.
You're 28 years old. You're my age. Come on. I can appreciate ambition and confidence, but maybe don't talk shit when you haven't even won the election yet.
That's true.
So, anyway.
Well, and kind of the audacity to claim that a bachelor's degree implies wisdom is
right.
Kind of far-reaching in my opinion.
That seems to be a characteristic of youth anyway.
Not that we're old by any means.
No, of course not. I like to think maybe
well-read
more mature,
helps.
And then I make a dick joke, so that's out the window.
That's true. You did do that.
But one thing I wanted to point out in addition to that is that she's simplifying things quite a bit in my mind. So if you're a politician, especially at that level, if you're at the federal level, you are voting on policy, I would hope that you are surrounding yourself with individuals that do have specialized education and background in certain things. Because you can't be an expert on everything.
That's true.
So I would hope that you have an advisor for foreign policy, you have an advisor for domestic policy, for economics, for immigration policy, whatever. You surround yourself with those specialists, and you make a decision. You make a decision.
She wouldn't necessarily need to do that because she's representative for a district, right?
But she's still voting for laws. So it's if you want to make an informed decision when you are representing your people, what is best for your district, your constituents, you want to be able to make an informed decision. And if you're trying to tackle all of the different types of laws and policy that Congress votes on, then you need to be advised by knowledgeable people.
But I thought her whole point was to just get elected and then try to get elected to a higher... Oh, she's actually going to serve her constituents.
Well, that remains to be seen.
Okay.
But right now, all that matters is that she has to at least play the game until she gets there.
Nice.
So that certainly struck me as kind of like, okay, maybe tone it down a little bit. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I'm pursuing a degree in economics. That I don't expect that I'm going to be a domestic policy expert by the end of finishing my degree. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and yeah, she's probably had a couple years to figure it out, but she was a bartender, and I don't know. I don't want to throw stones.
That's an interesting point. She finished her degree and then she became a bartender, which New York, that seems to be a regular thing, except those are mostly failed actors. So that's interesting. After that, she became a campaign manager for Bernie Sanders in the most recent 2016 election, which isn't surprising considering her platform. So you mentioned very briefly that she had a couple of years to kind of figure things out. But based on her platform, well, there's no evidence that supports that theory.
That she figured anything out?
Exactly.
Oh.
So it's surprising to me that someone that does have a background in economics has based her entire platform on modern monetary theory.
Well, but here is what she did figure out. She figured out some way to mobilize people in that district to vote, but only enough people that were going to vote for her. Because I looked at the numbers of the amount of people that could vote, the amount of people that did, is a terrible turnout. But that's something that she did accomplish. So if she spent all of that time focusing on that, I guess she got it right.
Well, yes and no. So that's one other thing that I wanted to address. While the media is portraying her as this underdog, this, the future of the party and all of these wonderful acclimates and everything else.
Accolades.
Accolades, thank you.
Acclimate, I like
Acclimate, whatever. When she ran for the primary, she didn't have much of a contestant. And I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah, he didn't campaign. He didn't show up since he's been in office for 10 years. It was like, I'll be fine, and then he wasn't. So.
Right. Well, I mean, he even went to the point, to the lengths of having a surrogate stand in at a couple of the last debates for the campaign.
Wow, that shows strength.
That shows something. It shows that he was confident enough that he was going to win that he didn't even bother to show up. So it's not so much an underdog story. This isn't Rocky and that Russian guy.
Ivan Drago.
There you go. If he dies, he dies.
I must break you.
So this obviously wasn't one of those cases. This isn't... She won. Okay, she won the primary.
Yeah.
Great. But let's not hold her up like she did something special.
That's, to what you said earlier, she hasn't actually won yet.
Right. Well, so. she won the primary, but she hasn't won the actual election.
Yeah.
And there's a rumor going around, and I'm totally talking out of my rear end here, but there's a rumor that he's actually going to be running on a fusion ticket, so that could potentially split the vote.
Are you serious?
Which would just be one of the funniest, we truly do live in the best timeline. But can you imagine if, because this guy failed to take his primary seriously, he has to resort to running on a fusion ticket, but in doing so, he ends up splitting the Democrat vote between him and Miss Cortez.
Casio-Cortez.
Yeah, the watch Cortez. And
that's so ridiculous.
And in doing so, a Republican is elected in that district.
Or libertarian, or whomever. Yeah, but it would be. Yeah.
So, party duality is a horrible thing. So,
I agree.
I mean, regardless, it doesn't affect me that much. I would just sit back and laugh, much like I have for the last, year and a half.
Well, it would be history all over again with Bernie and Hillary splitting the vote, and then all of the infighting. So, who has the secret email server at this point? That's
right.
It's kind of...
Well, I mean, at least doing something kind of mysterious like that. Miss Cortez just has economic policy.
Yeah, which you were going to get into. So
right.
By all means, dive in.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
MMT.
So MMT, modern monetary theory. I won't bore our audience with the ins and outs of this, but our own Vinnie Marshall did do a recent interview on the Think Liberty podcast. That he goes much further into detail of MMT, but I did want to point out that as I was going through different articles to research about this, there was an article from, it wasn't the Wall Street Journal, it was another economic journal publication that was praising her economic policy using MMT. Well, I then found from the archives of that exact same publication a article from about 6 years ago that was talking about how MMT is an abject failure and it is fatally flawed. Literally the same publication. I'm not making this up. After we're done recording this, I'll go look it up. We can plug them into the comments or the
we'll put
the
a
description.
link. Interesting.
Yeah. It's just, are you serious? And of course, we could get into a much wider discussion about how just obviously biased the media is. They're looking at who they want to support first, and then looking at the actual applicability or the capability that their policy has, to actually do good things.
Yeah.
But so her platform, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. So her platform is jobs for everyone. So everyone will be guaranteed a job.
Oh, guaranteed.
Yes,
Because
guaranteed.
I was thinking, well, we already have opportunity to get a job.
Right to it. No, you have a right to a job. Don't you know?
Well, sure. Like, you can go out and submit your resume.
No. You don't have to do any of that. The government's going to do it for you. But I digress. Obviously, Medicare for all, because Medicare is a human right. Housing is now a human right as well, apparently. So that will be provided for everyone. We're going to abolish ICE. We are going to, let's see, there's something else that was just completely ridiculous in it. Oh, right, free higher education for all. So there's a lot of frees. There's a lot of human rights. There's a lot to unpack here. So let's look at this. Let's widen our scope here a little bit. Let's look at big picture. So all of these different things are going to cost money, to include having a job for everyone, because you've got to pay them, right? So
well, next you're going to talk about minimum wage fixing. And...
$15 an hour is also part of her platform, yeah. But anyway, that's for the private sector. So all of everyone else that has to get a public sector job, we'll just give them $12 an hour. That's a totally separate conversation. But
this is
it's all kinds of, it's a big goat rope. But so you might notice among all of these freebies and human rights and everything else, there's a lot of money involved here. It's not actually free. So somebody's got to pay for it.
Well, it is a lot of money unless the thinking is that the people on the receiving end of getting paid to teach, they just won't accept any salaries.
Well, I mean, the government's taking care of their health care anyway, right?
So just pay them less the amount that you would have to pay for health care. That'll make someone happy.
Yeah, of course. Just somebody. And they've got free housing, so that...
So now pay them even less to pay like an average mortgage payment.
Yeah, exactly. And
for 20 or 30 years.
I mean, why stop there? Why don't we provide food for them?
Okay, so that's even less money in salary.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they don't need it at that point. They don't need to spend it on food because we're taking care of it for them.
That's true. So healthcare at a certain point could devolve into, like general sustenance.
Right.
In order to be healthy, it's a human right to have food given to you.
Right.
At any time that you demand it.
Granted, at some point along the line, we have to assume that rights mean that they're going to be provided for you, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, not at all how rights actually work. So
that's an important distinction.
Let's breeze over this real quick because it is important to note for those of our audience that hasn't listened to the Liberty Bites article, the Liberty Bites episode talking about a primer on rights. So there's positive rights and negative rights. So negative rights are, in a nutshell, things that are not provided for you. Those are things that you have the opportunity to exercise. And you have the right, keyword there, to exercise. No one's forcing you to. It is not something that you get. It is something that you can use.
Are those the rights that if you were the last person on Earth, you would still have them against nature?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Positive rights are... They're not technically a misnomer, but positive rights are what collectivists like to call anything that they think the government should provide for you.
Okay.
So I have a right to health care. I have a right to housing. I have a right to a living wage, whatever that is. I have a right to all of these things. So they're not saying that you have a right to the opportunity to have those things, or the right to exercise your own work, put in your own effort to achieve those things. They're saying that the government has to provide that because it's a right, which is not how that works. If that was the case, I would be in front of the courthouse demanding that the government outfit me with an AR-15 and a Glock.
Well, I guess by the same stroke of the pen, couldn't they just take the positive rights away?
Well, of course they could, and that's one of the other key differences between...
Well, then there's no power.
Right.
There's no power to the individual in the ideology that rights come from the government, right?
Which is exactly why it's so important to emphasize that negative rights are not provided by the government, in the same way that positive rights aren't a thing because they're not provided by the government. Rights are things that you have. They are your birthright. They are your inheritance as a human being. The right to free speech, the right to defend yourself, which is what the right to bear arms comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
The right to privacy, expression. We can go down the list. But
Yeah.
the government doesn't provide those things for you, because if they were providing them for you, then they could just as easily take them away. So instead, when you have documents like the Constitution, they are creating a barrier between the individual and the government without anchoring itself to the government in any way. We talk about how these are God-given rights. These are inalienable rights, and not God-given in the sense of a religious point of view, because I misspoke. Several of the founding fathers were what we would consider atheists, or agnostic at best. So, but even then, they use this language to show that these rights are above any government. They are ours by birthright, by divine right.
Mm-hmm.
No government can touch it because this is above that. But when you start diluting it with things like, well, this is a human right, or, it is my right to free health care.
The dangerous slope that I keep hearing undertones of every time you mention things like that, or anyone, is American imperialism. Because if you keep trumpeting the value system that it is a human right for such and such, at some point, people, I think, are going to mobilize and then force those values on other countries. Mm-hmm. And it can definitely be argued that, after the year 2001, that was kind of the thing that we did in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And we have done, and Britain's done over the years in Africa. But eventually, if this rhetoric keeps going on, it's going to shift from people that are right of center to people left of center. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily something I've ever talked about, but those undertones are eerily similar to past government policies.
I think that's a very good point, and I want to tie that in a little bit, because what a lot of people don't understand about the USSR, can there be a Gadsden's law that every time you talk about politics for any given amount of time, you're going to get to the USSR, you're going to get to communist Russia?
You have to write a dissertation.
But seriously, I'll do it, man.
Okay.
Named after me.
Okay.
But it's an interesting point to make, because when they set up the USSR under Marxist-Leninism, mm-hmm. There was even talk of forming a constitution based on the the U.S. Constitution, because even they recognized the importance of seizing and enshrining the rights of the individual. Obviously, the proposed one was going to be quite a bit more watered down and put a lot more focus on the centralized government as being the provider of these rights. But even past that, they saw things like the U.S. Constitution as a springboard. So yeah, they did pretty good, but we need to do more. So we need to create a platform where
really they
yes.
need to do more.
Right. So this is where it gets interesting, because we hear all the horror stories about the pogroms and the Holodomor and the gulags and all of these other things, but when it first started out after the revolution, all of the talk was centered around enabling the individual, empowering the individual. So women are going to be equal to men under the law. Women were became allowed to legally divorce their husbands. Like all of these very unprecedented things in Russia at the time. The communists, the Bolsheviks, and the lesser parties took all of those things, the traditions, and flipped them on their head. And they said, okay, we're doing away with all of the old Russia, the Tsarist Russian traditions, and we're going to give the individual far more power. Which, again, is interesting because you're introducing a totalitarian form of government and economic policy on top of this idea of empowering the individual.
Yeah, so how well did that go? I mean, did they implement that?
They did. So
interesting.
You had, there was even free childcare, free higher education, free healthcare, and for a while, it seemed to be doing okay. They had one of the most rapid periods of industrialization in the modern world, in modern history. So, hey, worked pretty good. And then millions of people started dying. So, weird.
Plot twist.
So, it turns out when you recognize, at least in your country, that all of these rights that are given to you from the government can justify taking those away for any reason they choose because they have all of the power in that situation. So let's tie this back into Miss Casio.
That's probably going to stick.
No, I can't. Is it Ocasio? Casio?
Just do your thing.
Anyway, the watch lady. So now it's getting to the point where this is dangerously close. And we've been here before in American history as well. Are you familiar with the Second Bill of Rights?
Proceed.
Fair enough. So when our favorite socialist prick, FDR, was in power, he proposed a so-called Second Bill of Rights. And of course, we're familiar with the actual Bill of Rights. It is full of negative rights that the government does not provide for you and in the same way cannot take from you. This, on the other hand, was every American has the right to an automobile. Every American has the right to a house. Every American has the right to, whatever. It wasn't living wage, but something along those lines. Every American has the right to a job. And it wasn't just a job. It was a job that brought self-gratification, something along those lines, very flowery language. So he wanted to pass this, and thank God Congress at the time shut it down. So it ended up not happening. But we've already seen this. This is history repeating itself, obviously on a much smaller scale. But as the Democratic Party keeps blowing her up as this is the new thing, look to her, putting her up on a pedestal for everyone to see. This is the face of the Democratic Party. We've already seen how this turns out. We even tried to do it in America before, and it got shut down because there were people wise enough at the time that saw through it, and they were like, "No, we don't want to go this route." But it's happening all over again. So I want to talk about the why this sort of thing is happening all over again. But first, I really want to talk about her recent gaffes. So we mentioned that she has a degree in economics and a degree in international relations. So most recently,
you're really teeing her up as kind of a subject matter expert here.
Oh, indeed. Well, I mean, that's how she's presented herself. I'm not teeing her up at all. She
fair enough.
On multiple occasions bragged about her education and where she comes from and her experience, ? Community organizer. I mean, hey, Obama was community organizer.
That is true.
That's something. It's something.
It is by definition something.
It is something. So she keeps talking about all of these things that she's experienced in and she has education in. But when she was questioned recently in an interview, she just absolutely, you couldn't even say stumbled through it because that would imply she came out the other side alive.
That's true.
About the ongoing conflict between Palestine and Israel. So, what do you think about the Palestine-Israel conflict? What do you think the Israelis should do? And I mean, she got half a sentence in, and I think she literally ended it with and then about 5 seconds of silence. So this is who we're supposed to lean on.
You want to know what's funny about that whole situation?
What's that?
I don't know if it was Anthony Bourdain or somebody else, but there was some well-known show where they went over to Gaza and they interviewed the people there, and they talked about how they were forced out of a certain area of housing, and they had like spray paint on the side of the buildings and whatnot, and how it was so difficult to live in that area or something to that effect. I think that is actually what she was referencing when she talked about how the difficulties that they were going through with the housing. Because she said that, and I was like, no, I saw that. I know exactly what she's talking about.
Oh my gosh. So even cribbing an episode of a Food Network show, she couldn't even complete a thought.
There was some uncomfortable silence in that interview. Yeah.
But she has a degree in international relations.
Maybe that was the one that she just kind of got through, the other one was economics.
But economics, no, she's got that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because she was also quoted as saying that unemployment is so low in the U.S. today because most people are working 2 to 3 jobs, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So I'm not sure if you're too familiar with the process that the Bureau of Labor Statistics uses to study the amount of jobs, unemployment rates, and this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That's not how that works. So they don't base the statistics on how many jobs are currently occupied. They base it on how many people are not working. And you would think that someone that has an economics degree in economics would understand that. I mean,
the most interesting thing about all of that, when Barack Obama was our president, I don't know if it was his first or second time being elected.
Hashtag not my president.
Anyways.
Continue.
Anyways, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, under his presidency, I almost said reign, which is terrible, but
I mean
under his subjugation, he redefined full-time employment.
Okay.
So when he was doing the State of the Union address, take your pick, and he's talking about how many jobs they have created in the market, blah, blah, blah. That's another interesting thing is he says it never is implied that it's the market. It's government intervention.
Well, of course.
And any rudimentary Google search on YouTube of like Milton Friedman talking about government intervention and creation of jobs.
Yeah, but
just completely.
But I mean, the private sector, you didn't build that.
Okay. Anyways, like I said, I don't remember if it was first or second term, but they redefined the number of working hours from 40 or like 37.5 down to I think 20 to include full-time employment. So when he said we created X number of jobs, it's part-time work. So they started counting under no president before that, except from Barack Obama forward. Employment and creation of jobs is part-time work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So she's even more wrong on multiple counts.
Yes.
So she ends this statement by saying that the U.S. wasn't started on capital. Now, as a student of history,
well, yeah,
I can confirm she is correct. The U.S. did not start. Well, the U.S. is.
It wasn't the U.S., right? It was
the US
at that point. It was
did.
Colonies.
But yeah, you're right. So the colonies did not start on capitalism. When the Puritans came over to the New World to colonize for the sake of religious freedom,
Yeah, they did really well on their own, right? They needed no help.
Right.
They weathered
Yeah.
the winter. No one died.
Nope. It was
Yeah.
perfectly fine. They grew and they had a surplus of food, and that's how they had Thanksgiving. No, that was the winter before the first Thanksgiving when they all starved. Okay.
Oh.
Right, now we're caught up.
Okay. And they had what, a communal form of government?
No, I'm sure it was free market capitalism.
Well, it had
and
to
that's
be.
why they all starved.
That's why they failed.
Right, yeah. No, it was a religious commune where everyone pitch in a little bit, and we'll all be taken care of. We'll all be okay.
Yeah, just do a little bit of work.
Right.
And at home you can read by candlelight.
Right. Yeah.
And other such things I'm quoting from the Communist Manifesto.
Yes, exactly. I'm wondering how many of these references we should just give away because I'm not sure how many of them our audience is going to pick up on. Not saying they're dumb or anything.
No, it's just I'm very dry
You're
in my sense
dry.
of humor. So most of this is sarcasm.
I caught on to it. It's a great reference. But yeah, so most of them were malnutritioned. Many of them fell ill. Many of them died that first winter. And then, of course, that next springtime, when they came out the other side of it, many of them were ready to quit. That's when
go back to England.
Yeah, where they were under religious persecution.
Well, and how many people died?
I
the Great Middle Passage, is that kind of what they call it? Or is that during the slave trade?
Middle Passage is different, yeah.
Oh.
No. Yeah, well, anyway, a lot of them died in that first winter there. And then, of course, the local Native Americans came and they all hung out and, we had Thanksgiving. So that's good.
Yeah, and that was peaceful, too.
And
need to remind everyone.
Right. And, but interestingly enough, they were also brought out of that long-term by a barter system, which you might recognize as one of the forerunners of capitalism. Because if I have a good and you have a good, we don't have any currency, but hey, I need that good and you would like my good. Let's trade. It's voluntary, it's consensual, and we both benefit from it. So John Smith, yes, the John Smith from Pocahontas, is the guy that kind of turned that around and said, hey, this isn't working. We need to try something else. And so they moved more into the groove of market capitalism, as it was, at least as it was in that time period.
And he was famously quoted as saying, he who does not work shall not eat.
Yes. So that's one for you, Miss Casio.
Yeah.
That's one for you.
Tick, tick.
Anyway, so I think we've brutalized her enough at this point.
We'll get into your rudimentary layout of MMT.
Okay.
Because before we were recording here, you laid out some tenets of fiat currency and whether or not it's important that it's backed by anything.
Right.
Definition of fiat, but how that affects worth, how that affects essentially how you can, and my point was at will, reevaluate the value of the currency because there's no backing. Right.
So Vinny's going to skewer me if I get any of this wrong, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time. And
so reference the Think Liberty podcast on MMT.
I think it's episode 34.
Cool.
I want to say. Anyway, it's MMT's in the title.
Yeah.
But basically the idea is that it doesn't matter that we use a fiat currency because the dollar is what most of the rest of the world bases their own currency exchanges on. So it's just as good as real money. Like if we were tech savvy enough, I would want to plug in that clip from Dumb and Dumber. So, no, sir, those are IOUs.
That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs.
So basically everything is just relative at this point. So the actual value as far as what is backing the currency doesn't matter. And by extension, debt doesn't matter. How far we are as a country in debt doesn't matter anymore because everyone already sees our currency as the base to compare all of the others as far as exchange rates and worth of the other currencies and this and that. So if we're at that point anyway, yeah, let's just keep adding zeros to the end of our debt number. and we can fund whatever we want because it's all relative anyway.
I don't want to breathe too hard to knock the dominoes over that you just set up.
And as I said, that's a generalization.
That is a great way to set the country up for failure.
No, absolutely.
Because our economic adversaries, being China and Russia, all they need to do is mobilize their economy and their government in a specific way, in not that long measuring a period of time, and now they're the dominant currency, and we're just collapsed.
Well,
we are the fall of the Second Roman Empire.
Right. Well, I mean, China is already well on its way to doing just that. I mean, with their currency manipulation, tariffs, and they're basically being extremely strategic with their money because they know they can't beat the West in a military war. But in the same way, they know that they are dependent on us for their export of goods. Like, we're paying them tons of money to produce different goods. So they have been able to manipulate their economic policy in such a way to basically put our nuts in a vice. So if we made a stupid decision like that or made a mistake economically like that, yeah, we would be devoured. It wouldn't just be a little dip, it would be an absolute plunge.
Well, but how is that not setting us up for that?
It is. MMT is absolutely setting us up for that. If we base our economic policy on something like MMT, yeah, we're doomed. Absolutely.
Well then, okay. Well then lay out how, I guess, the left or the alt-left, how they are...
I don't know if there is an alt-left, man.
No, I think... So, well... If we were to take your stance, then everyone is either a centrist or an extreme socialist.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So here's my...
There's no JFK
tangent.
Democrats anymore?
No, absolutely not. They've either died out or they converted or they went to the GOP. 100%.
That's really discouraging.
There are no... Or maybe there are a couple kind of shuffled in there, but they're not power players. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer,
Warren,
Elizabeth Warren, dear God. You know, you could name off the current heads of the Democratic Party. They're all extremists. I don't think there are any moderate leftists anymore. If they were,
I hope there are, and they're just quiet.
It doesn't do us any good.
No, it doesn't, but it will if the tide shifts more towards right of center.
So I think there are still moderate leftists, but I think they're Dave Rubin. I think they are feeling alienated by their own movement, and so now they're identifying as classical liberals.
Hashtag walk away. And
hashtag walk away, joining the libertarian movement, you know, all these different outlets that they're moving away from the left, or as Dave Rubin said, the left has moved away from them.
Yeah.
You know, they feel alienated, so they're not voting Democrat anymore. So I don't think there is an alt left. I think it's trendy. I think it sounds cool. You know, we're drawing parallels between the extreme right and the extreme left. I get it, but I don't think there's an alt left. I think there's just the extreme left, and that is the new left.
So what is their end game?
Well, their end game is to tear down the country and form it in their own image.
Which is what?
I don't even think a lot of them know. So look at it this way. Think of it like a military, like a battle. Okay, so did you watch that History Channel show where they would do ancient battles and they had like the simulations and everything? See the cavalry doing this and that, the arrows and shit. So think of it like that. They're basically making a pincer movement around traditional values, around free market capitalism, around the culture that has made America great. They want to destroy all of those things. So they're attacking it through progressivism in general. They're attacking it through multiculturalism, through Marxist cultural Marxism, moral relativism. You can go on and on and on. What's the thing that Dr. Jordan Peterson's always railing on? Cultural Marxism, certainly, but postmodernism. Postmodernism, progressive economic policy.
Yeah.
All of these things are designed specifically to tear down everything that has made this country what it is. Every single one of them. And they're attacking with all of those at the same time. So they want to destroy all of those things that got us to where we are now, and they want to rebuild it in whatever they come up with after the fact. But they want to watch it all burn. That sounds incredibly hyperbolic, but I couldn't be more serious.
But why? Something that I wanted to say earlier when you were talking about, inalienable rights. If the folks that are trying to destroy this country went somewhere else, just on vacation, a week or a month, preferably longer than a week. But if they were there and talked to locals there that weren't there just to get tips and take their money,
Right.
But if they actually had heated or interesting political discussion, I think they would hopefully be enlightened to what it's like to live under a regime or under an ideology where it's anti-free speech, anti, LGBT, lowercase 2, etc.
What is a lowercase 2?
Justin Trudeau, two-spirited.
Oh, no, I know, but 2's a number. Lowercases are letters.
So it would be under...
Is a squared thing going on?
Well, it's like when you do H2O, so it's low, it's below.
Okay.
I don't
see
know
what
the
you're saying
actual
now.
nomenclature for that.
No, you're
but-
right. I did horrible in chemistry in high school.
I watched you.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs. But look at me now. I'm doing YouTube videos with 10 views. So I think that's a bit optimistic, frankly. Because like what we've talked about before,
So if they're over there and they're inundated with contrary ideas from the countries that they just desperately are trying to support and mimic, you don't think that would change anything?
No, I don't. I think they are so enthralled, so entrenched in their ideology that they're going to refuse to see any of that, and they're going to focus on what they think it should be. So they're going to come up with excuses after the fact. Well, they didn't do it right.
So this is Hayek's fatal conceit.
Oh, of course.
We're actually a lot smarter than
Right.
them, and
They
we'll
didn't
do it
right,
better.
but I'll do it right. I know how to do it. Or they didn't have the right natural resources, or it wasn't the right time yet, or whatever. They'll come up with an excuse after the fact.
That's something that I've been thinking about in terms of whenever they say insert year here. Right now it's 2018, so next year it'll be different.
Right.
But
the year is 20 whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it is completely irrelevant. The modern time, the current time is the current time.
Right. It's 11:02. I shouldn't be dying of plague.
Yeah.
Well, here we are.
But I think their whole point of that is because of capitalism and relative wealth around the country, we have now ascended to a higher plane of being. And so now we can take away their goods and help support everyone else because, you at least need a sweet potato and, a thing of unsweet tea every day.
Right.
No one should die of hunger, which I agree, no one should.
Right.
Let's take a close examination of the amount of money that they spent on vice goods, unnecessary things, television, a computer, for instance. I think people can go to the public library. People have cell phones now; they have the ability to get information. I don't necessarily think adults starving is something that couldn't be avoided. I think it can be avoided. People not caring for their own children. And so, for instance, I went to a football game at UTK and looked at the number of people there, and then they had a PSA either before I was there or after about the certain number of people that were starving in that area and however many people were hungry. And I just looked at the vast sea of people, and it was like, there's enough food in this city to feed everyone.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. You know, the city of Knoxville is not necessarily that dense at all,
Right.
if there isn't a game day. So there's food is readily available, and kind of the thing that I keep hearing preached is that, oh well, you know, these kids or just people in the U.S. are starving. Why are they starving? Let's use the Socratic method for a second and see what they're spending their money on. And I hope, you know, they can shuffle their funds around and not buy things that are completely pointless, and they can actually buy food.
But that's up to them. And
I agree.
And I think more to the point, when you're talking about things like that, because this is a common argument I see on Facebook, for example, you know, I'm sure people think it sounds very clever. Well, we throw X amount of food out a day. Why can't we just give that to the poor? Okay, nobody wants to see people starving, especially in their own country.
I agree.
The difference is the solution that they propose is that the government divvy out that food. So both Hayek and Sowell talk at length about one of the primary reasons that a centrally planned economy will fail is because you have a handful of bureaucrats handling millions of transactions, you know, at any given time, and trying to direct all of those transactions with perfect precision. It's just not possible. So in the same way, even just take a city like Knoxville.
Yeah.
So how many bureaucrats can you devote to coordinating all of that? Okay. Ballpark estimate, let's say 30. Okay. How much money does it cost to pay 30 people? Now on top of that, those are just the controllers. How many drivers do you need? How many distributors do you need? How much gas and maintenance is it going to cost for those trucks? How are you going to pay the drivers? How are you going to pay the distributors? And all of those people in this chain have to work in perfect coordination in order to get this done. It's not possible. It's not humanly possible.
Well, and if you throw in unionization or, you know, rubber room,
right,
where, oh, well, now they can't be fired, you know, everyone's guaranteed a job. Yeah, I don't see things working out too well.
So you're talking about the difficulty of actually accomplishing something like that with the number of people available, but then you're talking about the cost of it as well. Where's that money going to come from?
Well, with modern monetary theory, you will print more, I think, because inflation is a social construct.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, so the Venezuelan bolivar has fallen because they keep printing more of it off.
Yeah.
The value of it has fallen to the point where you could get, you could exchange, I forget the exact number of dollars, but you could exchange a certain number of dollars for the equivalent of Venezuelan bolivar and use that to wipe your ass. And that would actually last you longer and for less money than a package of toilet paper.
Was it the Reichmarks, the Reichsmark, or whatever? During that time period, they had massive inflation as well.
So that was before the Third Reich, but post World War I in the Weimar Republic, hyperinflation. So I mean, you're talking about a literal wheelbarrow full of cash.
Yeah, for a loaf of bread.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The exact same thing happened after the fall of the Berlin Wall in East Berlin. You know, everyone was rushing to the banks to exchange their...
Rushing.
I'm less mad that you made the pun and more mad that I missed the opportunity to make that pun. You bad. So everyone was rushing to the Western German banks to exchange their Eastern German currency, you know, and even then it was worth next to nothing.
Wow. So
people that had socked away for years and years and years had nothing.
So this has almost nothing to do with what you're talking about, but I'd like to hear your points. Would something like that happen with North Korea? Let's say, I don't know how this would happen, But the Un regime is done in a certain manner of speaking, and there's full integration with the country. Do they just accept the South Korean currency and then they just print more to adjust for, per capita?
Dude, I'll be honest with you. I've
income?
got a lot of personal ties to South Korea. I love that country.
Sure.
Just some of the most polite, hardworking people I think I've ever met. It scares me what reunification would look like. And realistically, I think we would be looking at the largest humanitarian disaster in world history.
Well, and at this point, that's not on the table.
No, of course not. It's not anywhere close.
But it could be.
Anything's possible in the future. But if it did happen, you're looking at millions and millions of unskilled, uneducated people, malnutrition with all sorts of health problems that has been eradicated from the civilized world for decades now, pouring into.
But by that same token, don't we just have enough wealth to help them as well?
Oh, it hurts my brain.
But this is the leftist imperialism that I'm talking about. If that was a situation, that was a reality, it would be cries from folks petitioning the UN. Well, doesn't the US and Western Europe, don't they have enough wealth to help out North Korea? Russia!
Well, I mean, that's exactly...
Russia, let's throw rhetoric at you and hope that you just kind of bow to our will because we're using strong words. When has that ever worked, by the way?
It's not, and it wouldn't in the future either, especially with a leader like Putin in power. So, I'm honestly not sure what that would look like, but it would be bad. That's the only thing I'm sure about. Because it's either that, in the scenario I laid out, or you're going to have police and military keeping North Koreans in the north.
That's not good.
But then they're going to have to set up refugee camps. So you're in a barely better situation. So now you got to pay for these poor, unskilled, uneducated, malnutrition.
Ooh, so this is kind of dovetailing off of that, because the thought that's jumping into my head is you would have forced education, I think, on that next generation that comes up, which aren't they doing that in some Scandinavian country? They're forcing civics courses.
Is that Danish?
I think, yeah.
So there's a Danish policy with all of the immigrants.
That's a current event, right?
Refugees, migrants, yeah. And this is interesting. I think this is something that we should address in a future episode so we can really flesh it out. But I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So the Danes have set up a program where if you're going to come into the country from a Middle Eastern country or a war-torn country or a refugee, whatever,
sure.
if you do not have a background that easily assimilates to their culture, you have to go through cultural assimilation training, or else you will lose custody of your children. You will not be able to access social welfare benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, dude. I mean, the Danes are playing hardball.
Yeah.
And I really want to explore...
Well, and why, right? Like, let's look into the why. Probably because their culture is being eroded.
Well, yeah. I mean, eroded is too soft of a term. But
decimated.
I really, really want to get into that.
Eviscerated.
I think for the sake of time, there's a little bit more I want to flesh out on that side, but we now know what we're going to do for our next episode. So that's good stuff. So if that did happen with the reunification process, gosh, man, it would be nasty. It would be really bad.
It's something I haven't necessarily thought about.
It's something you should consider, and I'm sure there's contingency plans typed up in the offices of state departments around the world, that are just shelved and collecting dust for if and when that scenario ever comes up.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be terrible. But yeah, people would say, well, we have to do something. Let's pull it out of our ass.
Yeah, wouldn't they?
No, they absolutely would. All these poor people, at what cost?
Which they are.
Let's
introduce true unbridled free market capitalism.
Right. Which is what has brought millions upon millions of people throughout recent history out of abject poverty. Given them electricity, modern amenities. We have delivered modernity to almost all of the rest of the world in an extremely short span of time through capitalism. Not even free market capitalism necessarily, although the greatest success stories have been through absolute free market capitalism.
Yeah.
But even through watered down capitalism, we've still done untold good for the rest of the world.
Yeah. I just think of the spit of land that was Hong Kong and what it is today.
Right. No natural resources to speak of.
Kind of a port city, right?
Kind of a port city, a little bit out of the way. It's not on any natural, traditional trade routes. And now it's one of the wealthiest cities in the world. Singapore, Dubai, those are far closer to actual free market capitalism than we are. And that is why they have been so much more exponentially successful in a much shorter span of time. It's a no-brainer to me. And in the meantime, you have people making excuses about, well, they didn't do socialism right, or they didn't do communism right. If we do it this way, then it'll work. And that's where we have people like the young Miss Cortez.
Yeah. Ocasio.
Thank you. I honestly could not remember.
I was looking at you. I was like, I think he doesn't even know.
I'm going, help me.
Yeah.
So Ocasio-Cortez, this is where they step in. And so they're feeding on humanity's basic want for a simple answer.
Yeah.
For their basic want for someone else to take care of them, for security, for this and that.
So here's the simplest answer to that I can give. And this is going to be strange for some people. Work diligently, work hard at something that you really love, find someone to pay you for it. Invest that money wisely with a peer or someone who is your elder, who's a financial advisor. Have your money grow for you in the market, whether that is a risky endeavor or something that's more conservative. Grow your money over time. So when people say, oh, the rich just keep getting richer, that is a fundamental principle of exponential growth and compound interest. Every year, every month, however often that compounds, you will make more money. The more money you put into your account, the more it grows at a quicker rate because of compound interest. It's so fundamental when people, oh, the rich keep getting richer. Yes, that's the fundamentals of the market and compound interest. If you make even moderately risky or just straight middle of the road investments, you're going to make more money. If you don't invest in anything and you're shoving it in your mattress or into a bottle, which no, we're not. This is kind of frivolous money at this point.
Well, I mean, it's coming out of the bottle. So,
But even so, it's like we're not wasting all of our money on alcohol and mind-altering substances.
Right.
This is just something that we decided to spend money on.
Well, and it's not even that. I mean, we don't want to paint people that can't afford to invest as substance abusers.
I agree. But everyone can invest, is my point.
And
you can put in
that's what I
$20
wanna
a
expound
month,
on
$50
more.
a month.
Yeah, so don't go to the red box, however often you do. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once a month. Don't go to red box.
Yeah, do an honest assessment of your budget and what you spend every month.
Do you need a new TV? Probably not.
Yeah.
Can you get a used one or a refurbished one, or maybe don't get one at all? Do you need a new cell phone? What are your needs versus your wants?
And
this
just
basic.
why?
Yeah.
Keep questioning everything.
Yeah.
We just live in a country where maybe people's aspirations are right on point. Maybe they're too low or too high. And for the folks that have them that are too high, just pull your timeline back a little bit.
Right.
Get measurable skills in an apprenticeship, actually working somewhere for someone, or in a traditional education.
Right.
There's just too much time to not better yourself, I think.
And I
even
hear
if you're older, there's
sure.
too much time. You can do it.
Well, and that's when you get into the opportunity cost, the concept of opportunity cost. So if you spend, however many hours a day watching Netflix, what are all of the other things you could be doing to better yourself during that time? You don't have to spend the whole time bettering yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I know
takes some downtime.
you use Skillshare. There are plenty of different free resources, even on YouTube, the platform that we're on right now.
And
it's
that's what really bothers me when I hear about people are saying, well, I just don't have an opportunity for better education, or I don't have time, or whatever. No, you absolutely do. It's all about management. So you can't go to school. Okay. Go to Khan Academy, watch Khan Academy online. There's a couple other free certification colleges that are on the tip of my tongue. Go to your local library.
Yeah.
Go to your local library, look up some of those courses. When you've completed the courses, print out the certificate, take it to wherever it is you work or where you would like to work. Set your aspirations low if you have to, but do something and use that as a stepping stone. If you don't get to where you want to be or you don't see results fast enough, you need to slow your roll. Maybe it's going to take a little bit longer to get to where you want to be, and that's okay. That's better than the alternative, which is looking for the simple, the easy response. Well, I want the government to take care of it for me, and then we get into the idea of positive rights, where the government can just as easily take it away from you.
Yeah,
and it seems like such a simple concept to me, but I understand that people struggle, and it's frustrating and it's hard. You don't like it, but the opportunities that I've made for myself in my line, I didn't come from a wealthy family or anything like that. I've made myself into what I am now through my work. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of frustration, but I get so much more satisfaction out of that. I've got a clear path ahead of me that becomes more and more clear every day. I'm pursuing college education that is paid for by my employer. I'm 28. I'm an old student. I go into class and I'm easily the oldest guy there most of the time. That's fine. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm getting to where I want to be, and I'm not going to have any college debt when it's over. So, screw them. But everyone wants to hold their hand out. Everyone wants to say, well, this person is promising to give these things to me.
It's the path of least resistance.
And all I have to do is vote for them.
That's our human nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what people like her and people like Bernie Sanders are preying on. And I realize that's a strong word, but that is absolutely what they're doing. They're seeking power, they're seeking control, and they are preying on the people that don't understand the repercussions of those types of policies. Bernie Sanders has 3 houses and a boat. We've talked about this before. I did my awful impression of him.
People really liked that, though.
Apparently, yeah. I've got a few compliments on it. But really, it is god-awful. These guys don't care about you. They don't care about, I'm in it for the worker, the American working class. They don't give a shit. They want to be in office. They want to get power.
It's interesting how accurately Bernie Sanders actually is in the 1%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Which begs the question, how is he making all of that money as a politician? He's been a politician for, 40 years now?
I'm not auditing his books. I do know where his accounting firm resides, though, which is funny. I worked in the same building as them.
Let's not disclose that.
Yeah.
But it's just, how are these politicians so obscenely wealthy? Look at Maxine Waters. She lives in a multi-million-dollar house. Most of these people are making $100,000, maybe a little bit over a year, as their salary.
Yeah, we went from the country being founded to it's a civil service. Oh, hey, you have to be representative now. Oh, shucks.
Right, you have to take time out of what you would rather do to serve the country, and they saw that as certainly a badge of honor, but not something that they would necessarily want to do.
Well, and just by the reality of how long the country existed, no one was a career politician.
Right.
They were laborers, they were skilled craftsmen, and philosophers up until a point, and then they became civil servants. But now, someone our age clearly can become a representative potentially.
Right.
They can run a good campaign appealing to people that would vote for them, and they get into office or win the primary. But, to say that you and I have had extensive experience in the private sector is not accurate.
Right.
And neither has she.
Right.
And if she stays in politics for the rest of her career, she's just not going to know what's going on.
Right. But the longer that those types of people stay in office, the more power, the more connections they have, the more they can pursue their agenda, absent the actual intent of their constituents. Because I mean, we both know, I've talked about this before on Liberty Bites, that the average American voter doesn't look into anything below the presidency anymore. They just don't care.
Man.
They're fat, dumb, and lazy.
But local elections actually affect you.
Absolutely, they do more than almost anything else. But they don't want to look at any of that. They want to hit the easy button. Well, I'm just going to vote straight ticket, or I'm not going to participate in the primaries. I'll just see how it pans out, and I'll vote for my party.
Yeah, we need to talk about voting at some point later. I heard someone say, they proposed, voting could be done online. And what I understand about computers and falsification of information through electronic reports, it's just way too easy. Like even the ideas of, the Russian collusion and whatnot, you can easily bounce your location off of a VPN. Or some other provider in a different country, and it'll look like you're from that country. So to say, Russian collusion, Russian hacking, it could be from some kid in Oklahoma, or an adult in I don't know, New York State or California, or like whatever state or area that you want. It could be from anywhere, and they would say that it's Russian or from Turkey or whatever. It's just the electronic age is not as transparent, I don't think, as what people actually realize.
Oh, if anything, it's more opaque.
Yeah. Hey, hop on public Wi-Fi at a Starbucks.
Right.
Hey, your information's gone now because you clicked on an auto update that wasn't actually real.
And you don't even need to buy a coffee to access Starbucks Wi-Fi now.
That's true. Just go straight to the restroom.
Yeah. Damn it. This is something that, to touch back on what we did on the last episode, is this idea of the advancement of technology. It's not necessarily going to empower one side or the other, or one group or over another. It's all dependent on who takes control of it themselves. So the rules are still the same. Human nature still applies. For every person that wants to do good with it, there's going to be somebody that wants to do bad with it. And both people are going to figure out how to accomplish those goals on their own. So there's no easy answer here. There's no way to simplify elections. There's no easy way to make sure everyone has a home or is fed or has higher education or better health care. There's no easy way to do any of those things.
Yeah, easy being the operative word.
Indeed. But we can look at history as a sort of litmus test, and we can study other models, the success that they had, what made them successful or what made them fail, and we can use those to model our own policy off of that. And we too can be just as successful as Singapore or Hong Kong or what was the other country I brought up? Dubai.
Yeah.
The city.
UAE.
We can be just as successful as them, or we can fail just as starkly as any of the other socialist or communist countries that we've seen in history. But it's up to us. But in order for us to actually make one or the other happen, it's a bit of an interesting duality, because we can either put in the effort, put in the work to be extremely successful, or do nothing at all and meet with abject failure. It's terrifying to put it in such simplistic terms, but realistically, that's what we're looking at now. And the more that people like Alexandria Ocasio,
Ocasio.
I was close.
Casio.
Casio. So the more often that people like Bernie Sanders or people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are put up on a pedestal and are idolized and seen as the new thing. This isn't new at all. It's old. And we already know the end of this story. We've all seen this movie. We know what's going to happen. But we keep falling for the same trap every single time. It's like that meme where when you're signing up for a new free Amazon Prime account, and it's this obviously the same guy, but he just like wears a different suit or shirt or something. It's the exact same thing with these centrally planned economic policies. We know what happens. They just change one thing. They just rebrand it a little bit and send it out again, and people still eat it up. It's so frustrating, especially when we have far more recent, far more accurate, obvious examples of the success of free market capitalism right in front of our faces. But people reject that. We're like the other meme. This is how we communicate in the modern day now. Okay, just let it happen. Where the dude sets a plate in front of the other guy and he just throws it down the hallway.
Yeah.
We're throwing the successful models down the hallway, and instead we want the stuff that's easy.
I'm in danger.
I'm in danger. We're all in danger at this point, and in the future we're no longer going to do video episodes. We're just going to post memes in a series.
We'll just voice over memes.
I mean, we might as well at this point. But that's what we're looking at right now. So it's going to take enough people that are willing to make the hard decision to say that I am going to work. I'm going to put forth an effort. I am not going to give in to this idea of an easy button that I can just punch and somebody's going to take care of it for me. And if we get enough of those people, then we could be more wealthy, more successful than any civilization the world has ever seen. But it's going to take those people putting forth that effort and changing their mentality away from what is popular. I mean, we're the new punk rock, We're the new rebellion.
Sounds good to me.
That's something to be proud of, man.
Indeed.
Well,
if I had anything left in here, but
nor do I. So we'll just
for posterity.
Indubitably. Do you have anything else to add?
No, just that it's exciting that we have so much other material to talk about for the future.
Man. It's just stacks on stacks. We just got to find time.
Yeah, but MMT, it's not new. It's not the way to go. And I really do see it as setting up the dominoes to knock it down. Like you're saying, the country is moldable clay, and at some point we just need to squash the castle that we've already made and rebuild something that looks nothing like a castle. I don't even know what it would look like. Just
you had a really good analogy.
No, I know. There. Okay, squash the castle and then just make like a spire, a monolith to nothing.
Sure. Or whatever the individual wants. Maybe it's not one castle. Maybe it's 360 billion. Castles.
Maybe it's something that they make and then just give to someone else. Maybe
only if it's voluntary.
Yeah, maybe that.
We're totally jacking up this curve. So all that to say, we need to empower the individual. We need to make it easier, not harder, for them to be successful economically, financially. But they also need to have the wherewithal to grab that bull by the horns and wrestle it to the ground. So, in the spirit of that, thank you for joining us with Liberty on the Rocks. I'm your host, William Gadsden, and I hope this episode has brought you closer to becoming more liberty-centered with us. Tom, as always, it's been a pleasure. And be sure and check out Think Liberty on Facebook, Twitter, wherever your favorite social media is, and of course our website at think-liberty.com. Check out our merchandise store, our new Amazon merchandise store, and I'm your host, William Gadsden with Think Liberty.